briefly looking at some of our faculty trends, and then concluding today looking at finances, tuition, and student debt, which are very, very, very difficult and hot topics today on the American higher education landscape. When we think about the history of American higher education, we could spend hours upon hours really looking at each of these eras as we go through. But for today's purpose, really, we're just going to look at some of the key movements that happened during each of these eras and how it really shaped the scope and landscape of higher education today. When we start with these first three eras, we begin in 1636 with the founding of Harvard University and 9 colleges in total during this era that were formed. And these institutions were basically formed off of the model that we see in Europe during this time. It's very much a European model. The education was really provided for young white males who attended these institutions. And this was the beginning. And much of what happened at these 9 institutions, they still see remnants today of the impact and the footprint that they had in our landscape. As we move on to this next era of 1790 to 1869, we still see the heavy influence of faith-based institutions. About 85% of college enrollment was located in institutions that have a faith-based connection. We begin seeing the first movements towards expanding the footprint of higher education. So we see the beginning of women's colleges being formed, allowing, again, more population, more students to be able to attend and enroll in our institutions. And then the most fascinating act during this time on the federal level was the Morrill Act. And the Morrill Act provided 30,000 acres in each state for states to provide and to grow and to build institutions of higher education that specifically focus on agriculture and mechanical arts. And many, many, many scholars will say it's the Morrill Act that really moved us towards a mass education system, providing funding and support for each state to move forward with these areas and to give the access and funding needed to be able to grow institutions throughout the entire country. The university transformation era will see 2 focuses specifically on graduate education and research, but also growing the footprint of community colleges. And community colleges, which have more of a focus during this time on vocational programs, 2-year programs, we see the growth of the need and the interest of students for these institutions, as well as the graduate institutions. Looking at the idea of mass education system during this era, the GI Bill was passed, which provided military personnel funding for tuition, books, living expenses while attending school. So again, just like the Morrill Act of an era earlier, we see this as a massive movement to opening the pipeline to higher education to more and more students through the support of funding. The next 3 eras, moving quickly, in the mass higher education system, we see 3 policy changes that again changes the pipeline for students who can enter into higher education. The first looking at the landmark Brown versus Board of Education case in 1954. To higher education, which determined that separate educational facilities based on race are unequal. We look at Title IX that prohibits sex bias in educational programs and activities. And then the Rehabilitation Act, which looked at prohibiting disability-based discrimination when it comes to college and university admissions. So all of a sudden, 3 populations of students that for the longest time would not have a place in higher education in the same way others would, are now expanded the right and the ability to enter into higher education. The consolidation era, we see changes to our curriculum. We see institutions that for the longest time were focused purely on liberal arts education start moving towards vocational programs where there's more student interest. And the beginning conversations about the cost of higher education and the value of higher education we see during this time. And again, a conversation that is very, very much alive today, if not more so than during this era. And that leads us to really the contemporary era where we see ourselves today. And we see the changes to not only our organizational structures, we see changes and challenges to our curriculum and the nimbleness of being able to create a curriculum that matches with our workforce areas and needs. And we look at the costs and changes to our student demographics and how our institutions are changing. So this real brief overview of higher education in the United States gives some nuances to really leading to where we are today. In the United States, we take great pride that we have such a wide pipeline for students, that we believe we have a seat for everybody in the American higher education system through our community colleges, through our 4-year institutions, through our research institutions. But there are many, many difficulties that we'll talk about today to really help support and help for student success moving through. When we look at our institutions, there are really a great diversity of different type of institutions that we have within the country. So we'll look starting at our four-year institutions. And our four-year institutions are bachelor degree, master's degree, doctorate degree type institutions. A bachelor's degree in the United States is approximately 120 credits. And we see that from 2000 to 2019, there hasn't been dramatic changes in terms of the number of institutions. But we do see some ebb and flow in regards to institutions forming as well as institutions closing. On the four-year level, we have currently about 730 public institutions, which we consider state, county, in terms of their funding. We look at our private nonprofit. We have about 1,300 institutions today. These would include both faith-based institutions as well as institutions that are run by a private board foundation. And then our private for-profit, we have about 300 institutions, again, that are eligible to award bachelor's degree or higher for our students. Of these four-year institutions, there's much, and we'll get into this in another orientation video, there's really great diversity of admissions level. So there are some of these institutions that would be considered open access, that would have a seat for all those that apply, and some that are extremely competitive, only allowing in a certain percent of the top applicants to their institution. When we look at two-year and associate degree looking institutions, these would be institutions that award associate degrees or certificate degree programs, both in credit, and then we also have some non-credit certificate programs. Public, we see about 870 currently in the United States. The private nonprofit, about 80, and then the private for-profit, about 380 institutions that we see today. Orientation this afternoon, we're going to look at the student pipeline and enrollment trends. And we hope to look a little bit about our immediate enrollment trends, and I'll define that in just a few minutes, looking at some of the demographics of our student. And during this section, we'll also look a little bit of our faculty and the different types of roles, full-time, part-time, and rank that we see among our faculty. It's interesting when you look at our pipeline of higher education today, about 37% of our college students are 25 years or older. For the longest time, we thought of our traditional students, in air quote traditional, from 18 to 22 years old. We're seeing a much growing population of students who are attending our institutions and coming back to higher education. We also see about 46% of our students are first-generation college goers. And we know from different research of student success, oftentimes our first-generation college students need additional support for their success as entering into higher education. Students that are coming over to higher education is what we call our immediate enrollment trends. Immediate enrollment trends are college grades, gains in critical thinking and analytical thinking, and are more likely to earn a graduate or professional degree than Black peers at predominantly white institutions. And when we look at the overall degrees awarded by HBCUs, we'll see that in 2018, of the 48,000 degrees awarded, 11% are on the associate level, 68% on the bachelor degree level, 16% on the master's degree level, and 5% on doctoral level. The next type of institution that I think, again, gives shape and diversity to the American higher education system is our community college, our two-year associate degree programs. As we see reported by the National Center for Educational Statistics, in the fall of 2018, close to 5.6 million students were enrolled in public two-year institutions, both full-time and part-time. When we look at community colleges, we know that oftentimes our students are enrolled on a part-time basis, as many community college students are also working and have other responsibilities in regards to in addition to their academic responsibilities. We also see that so many of our baccalaureate degree students started their career in a community college based on many factors: academic preparedness, economics in regards to lower tuition rates, and being able to spend some time to figure out their vocational pursuits before transferring to a four-year institution. Community colleges also have done some great work in regards to having quite a diverse student population. Of current enrollment, we see about 44% of Hispanic undergraduates were enrolled at a community college, 35% of Black students, undergraduates, were enrolled at a community college, 31% of white students, undergraduate, were enrolled at a community college, and about 55% of dependent students with family income below 30,000 $30,000 start at a community college. Some of the areas that community colleges are working towards is academic preparedness. Currently, about 60% of students enrolled in a community college come in with an academic deficit in regards to math, reading, or writing skills. So community colleges are constantly looking at different ways to help students be academically prepared for higher education coursework throughout. Lastly, we spent a little bit of time looking at our tribal colleges and universities. Presently, there are 32 fully accredited tribal colleges and universities in the United States, over 358 total programs in number in apprenticeships, diplomas, certificate, and degrees. 181 associate degree programs are available at 23 different tribal colleges and universities, 40 different bachelor degree programs, and 5 master degree programs. Predominantly, these institutions are located in the Midwest and Southwest, and they serve a total enrollment of about 16,000 students. 9,000 to 10,000 are full-time, and about 7,000 students are part-time. And the undergraduate and graduate, 78% are American Indian, Native American, Alaska Native, 15%, white, 2%, Hispanic or Latino, close to 2%, and identified as more than 2 races, about 1%. So these institutions also have quite some diversity in regards to their institutions. I hope this overview
Institute of International Education, or IIE. We will begin the pre-departure orientation with this welcome session, and you will hear from the U.S. Department of State and IIE Program Management. So just a couple of housekeeping notes. Please share your webcam video if you feel comfortable to do so. The session will be recorded, so you may turn off your camera if you prefer. Please make sure that your microphone is muted so that we can eliminate any background noise during the session. We have closed captioning enabled for this session and all other sessions.
I think that while you're here on a Fulbright or hosting your Fulbright Scholar, I think you'll appreciate that and what that means. For 75 years, the program has promoted mutual understanding between U.S. citizens and citizens from other countries around the world. We think it's the premier U.S. government exchange program, and it's these partnerships that we have with 160 countries around the world that help make the program so unique. And you may in fact know that Fulbright is actually a constellation of different programs for students, for teachers, for scholars, for artists, for professionals outside academia, long-term grants, short-term grants. And I admit I'm a bit biased, but I think that the Scholar in Residence program is special because of its clear focus on promoting international understanding and global engagement. And you'll really see that, I think, in your time ahead, in your teaching, in your broad engagement across campuses, and in your interaction with the local community outside of your campus. We think that really makes the Scholar in Residence program special, and we hope that this pre-departure orientation will help prepare you for that experience. I think what you'll also see in the next 3 days that it's really been a group effort to bring this orientation to you. So thank you, of course, to IIE to Susan and Greta and Julia and Claire and Basim and your colleagues. Thank you to St. John's University for the great work they've done. Thank you to our terrific alumni host mentors and to alums of the Scholar Residence Program that have joined us. Thank you to my staff.
Within its larger community. But before we talk about any of that, we want to make sure that you are thinking about your Fulbright network, because that is a network that will be with you both before you travel, during your grant period, and then we hope for many years afterwards. And so we want to begin to connect you to people in similar areas of study in some cases, at host institutions, who will be resources for you and perhaps potential collaborators in the future. And so that you know that you have a group of people on whom you can rely when you want to talk about experiences that you're having or bounce ideas for research off of someone, so that you begin to build that network. So what we're going to do today is we've broken this very large group of people into a number of breakout rooms, loosely based on disciplines. So we don't have enough possibilities for everyone to have an individual breakout for their exact area of study, but we've tried to make it possible for you to be in a room with people of similar kinds of backgrounds and interests. And you are going to spend the vast majority of the time today just in those rooms, talking to one another, learning about where people are now and where they're going and what they'll be doing, and really talking about whatever you'd like. In a moment, I'm going to share with you some questions that can begin the conversation, but it's not a script, and you certainly are free to talk about anything you'd like. You should know that each of your rooms are going to have a facilitator. And so you, as the scholar who are here fresh for your first day of orientation, really your only responsibility is to participate in the conversation. But we have those facilitators there who are going to be responsible for making sure that that conversation is flowing and helping to make those connections. So what
I'm from Haiti, from the Caribbean. And I think that's it for a small introduction. Who else now?
Let's see, Mauricia or Adam?
Well, let's go for Mauricia. I don't have the long list of me, but let's go for Mauricia. Thank you.
Right.
Hi, hello, and good morning, everybody. I'm Mauricio Dominguez Aguilar. I work at Autonomous University of Yucatan. I have a PhD in geography. I've been working here for more than 10 years now. My area of research is climate change, particularly in adaptation and vulnerability in different topics, for instance, livelihoods, and also human settlement. My research and my teaching, I do it in the same field, although I also been teaching methodology of science in the past. I don't know.
State. There are a variety of program stakeholders and administrating agencies for you to be aware of. The first one is the United States Department of State's Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs. We usually call this ECA, and they sponsor the Fulbright program. The next is the Fulbright Foreign Scholarship Board, or the FFSB, which was created by Congress to establish policy guidelines for the Fulbright program and select all the grantees. Here are a number of pre-departure resources. The first one is the Institutional Response Form, or the IRF. The majority of you
any initiative, any research, you have to set up a protocol and you have to make it easy for people. Otherwise, it will not work. For instance, my hair is falling, and what do? I have two options. I can research on the internet about all the options there, what I have to eat, vitamins and everything, or I can go to the store and I just say, give me this bottle, and I just eat the pill every day. What I will do? I will do the second option because it's easy for me. So this is the mentality that you have to embrace if you want your projects, your research, and your initiatives to be successful and to be executed. And these are just some ideas to create diversity.